introduction to human-computer interaction. This is week number 7. I'm going to be covering this week on a special topic called usable security. And I hope you're enjoying the course until now, and I hope you're actually trying the things that we are talking about in the class, looking at the videos, talking about, I see some questions on the discussion forum, but I would expect, or I would be happy to see more questions being asked, which are not just administrative questions, as part of the mailing list also. So let's look at what is usable security. I'm sure all of you would have used systems where you have created security policies, or you would have created privacy settings. You would have used privacy settings of, let's take networks like Facebook, or you would have had in your operating system, you would be giving file sharing permissions in Google Drive. You're actually setting up preferences on who can edit, who is the manager, who can just comment on the document and things like that. So one of the ways to think about it is that usable security is like an oxymoron, right? Where the words, two of the words that are put together actually are completely opposite. So if you really look at usability and security, they are actually sometimes, if you were to increase the security, the usability is going to reduce. And if you're increasing the usability, security is going to reduce. Here are some examples that you can think about where these kind of, so to say, imbalance is going on between security and usability, right? For example, your banking website. You go to ICICI Bank website and you wanted to actually do a transaction and you wanted to move, let's say, transfer money from one account to another account. And when you go to the website, you're going to give your username and password. Then they also started using passcode, which is like so to say, an image that they will show you, and you have to figure out some features in the image or some objects in the image. Then there was this virtual keyboard, right, where they said that, oh, you can't type anymore the key passwords from the key because keyloggers can be there. So we'll actually shift the keyboard to the virtual keyboard where they will present the keyboard on their screen and you have to pick the keys. What they do is the keys that they present there are actually not the QWERTY keyboard, but they present it the way they wanted, the jumbled up and everything. So in that you'll have to find your characters and type it. And then they also started sending you now OTPs where you want to transfer money. There's an OTP that is sent to your phone. You have to key in that OTP because this is the out of band kind of verification. So they can actually check whether it is you who's doing the transaction by getting this OTP, and then they let you to do the transaction. So what they have done, they've basically increased the security. Of course, they're giving you some level of good security by all those measures, but in the process they've actually drastically reduced the usability of the system because somebody has to go through all this op in making a simple transactions. So on the other side, meaning if you were to keep think of the door in the office, you can actually increase the usability by not having a lock in your office, or by having simple doors which can be probably opened very easily or something. Therefore the usability is very high, but you're actually dropping off in the security, right? So that's the topic that we'll cover more and see how. So usability can also be referred with a word called utility. So it is security versus usability or utility of the system. As the security increases, the utility or the usability of the system is going to go down. I'm sure many of you have also seen this address bar change in color into green when the certificates of the websites are verified. And if it's not an HTTPS website, the symbol on the address bar changes, right? So these are all different aspects of, so to say, usability that is crossing over the security aspect, right? So it's an important topic. It's actually a very exciting topic also. In the last few years, the area has grown pretty big, and there are lots and lots of research done in this space. So we look at some of them today, and I will also give you some pointers which can actually give you more insights into this topic if you're interested in this topic. So why should we study this, right? The importance of studying this is, for example, again, right, end users license agreement. There is this, when you download, I'm sure many of you have downloaded an app in the last month or 6 months or 2 months or so. Before actually downloading the app and installing it, There is this end users license agreement which the app developer or the organization presents. There's a button I agree. How many of you actually read the end users license agreement before clicking on the button I agree, right? So these are the kinds of security versus usability topics that are interesting to study. And why is it important? It's important because there's lots of questions that you can answer. For example, what should be the default settings in Facebook, right, when you create an account? What should be the default settings when you create a Uber account, right? What should be the default settings about using your credit card, connecting to Paytm and things like that. So studying the settings of what the user should use is actually an important topic also. Right? If there are any experiences and relationship you see between usability and security, please drop it in the mailing list. We'll be happy to actually have a discussion around what you think about this topic. So that's the relationship between usability and security. Let's dig more into this topic. So this is the image that you're seeing on the right hand side is the file permission setting on Microsoft Windows at some point in time, right? So there are lots of issues in terms of setting up these file permissions. Instead of issues, let's just call it as lots of process, or it takes time to actually set up these privacy preferences properly, right? Settings properly. So here is what I think one of the PhD thesis, Rob Reeder, if any of you are interested in looking at this PhD thesis, is PhD thesis done by Rob Reeder, where he actually looked at how to reduce this particular problem of setting file permissions into easier ways of doing it, right? So the way that he tried was, in this case, I think in his thesis he argues that it takes about 13 steps to figure out correctly the file permission. That is, if there is a document, Word document that you have to share with somebody and they're part of some mailing list and they're part of some users group, how do you set the file permissions properly? For example, if I were to think of some settings, here is one. There is also another project around this topic, which we can talk about it later, where I want to share my current locations to people who are asking, right? So for example, students who are taking this NPTEL course should probably not have access to where I am from my location information. Whereas students at IIIT Delhi who are taking my course, or who are generally at IIIT Delhi itself, should have access to my location when I'm in my office, probably. And the days when I'm teaching, probably the students who are taking my course should have access to my location. And for the TAs, teaching assistants for the course, they should have access to my locations, probably a little more than what the students in the course should have. Whereas the faculty could probably have more, whereas my wife should have access to my location always, right? So that's the kind of setting scenario that you could actually have, where there's permissions for this information is different for different sets of users. Now, there are also problems in terms of actually setting up these file permissions properly. For example, there is a student who's taking the course, taking a course of mine, and he's also a TA of a course that I'm teaching, another course that I'm teaching. So what kind of file permissions, how do you manage these file permissions among the users, right? So these are all classical problems that people are trying to solve, but I'm just trying to highlight that there is a problem in terms of setting these kind of permissions in your day-to-day activities also, right? Google Drive, I'm sure many of you are using Google Drive, where you're trying to give sharing permissions with people who can edit, who can actually comment on all of that. Again, the PhD thesis is Rob Reeder. Feel free to take a look at it. The way that he solved it is he created something called as expandable grids, where he tried and said that we can actually reduce this problem into a grid form, where you just have this allow and deny for different users, for different settings, and for different users and different documents, the file permissions can be set. So if you look at this picture, right, it looks very secure. Probably it has very little physical access, unless people can just steal and take away the whole machine. So if you really look at the kind of attacks that are going on now, they don't really attack the physical, so to say, asset, right? Infrastructure. They attack more the semantic type of the attack, which is the human being type of the errors that we make. Right? So these kind of things are secure, but they are not just usable. So I'm just trying to give you a sense of this difference between security and usability, and secure and usable. Of course, unusable security frustrates users. Here are some kind of quotes that you can actually take a reference at. So the first quote reads as it's from Computing Research Association. The second one is from National Academy of Engineering. The first one reads as give end users security controls they can understand and privacy they can control for the dynamic, pervasive computing environments of the future. So this is in 2003. Just imagine how futuristic they were in terms of actually developing this idea of give the end users the control for setting things up. For example, in your Facebook, right? Can people tag you on pictures? If they tag you, I should get a review notification. And can I make my friends list public? Can I make only partial list public? And things like that. These are all, so to say, your security controls that you want, which can be actually controlled by giving you preferences in which you can control this. The second quote from National Academy of Engineering is more research needed on how cultural and social influences can affect how people use computers and electronic information, right? That's clear that the way that the privacy or the security aspects of things are understood in India versus in the US versus in the Europe are actually very, very different, right? We are still figuring out how to define privacy. We're still figuring out what levels of privacy controls to be provided, whereas in the Western world, they have already privacy laws, Privacy Act, GDPR, all of that is already very well established. And the interesting thing about this whole area of usable security or even the security itself is that humans are the weakest link, right? We make the most kinds of errors. And if you have read about these kind of breaches, most security breaches happen because of human error, right? Social engineering attacks actually proliferate a lot. So I don't know how many of you know what social engineering is. If I were to actually collect information about you, I'll call up a few people, ask them, pretend as though I am so and so, and I will actually try finding information about you. Let's take, I pretend as though it's your friend who's calling, whose brother is actually in your class, or a sister is connected to you, or things like that, right? So if you're interested in looking at more about social engineering, read about Kevin Mitnick. He's one of the very popular person who did the social engineering very effectively. But since this course is not about security, I'm going to focus on the usable security part. So how can you make secure systems more usable, right? So the question is, can you actually build systems which can be secure and which can be usable also, right? So the broader theme of the course is about building usable systems. Usable and useful has been our theme. And in that one particular area that we are focusing on is, can we build systems which are secure and usable? We'll also look at later about mobile devices itself, particularly HCI or user experience in mobile devices. But for now, we'll look at the security part. So 3 ways to actually attack and solve this problem, which is make it just work, make security privacy understandable, and train the user, right? So let me walk you through an example how this can be actually, you will be able to understand this better. So all of us use emails, right? When an email comes, there is some spam filter sitting somewhere, sitting and checking whether this email is legitimate or not, and it has a lots of features. Particularly if you look at Gmail, it has a lot of features that it has understood over all the emails that they are receiving, or all the features that people have given them, saying that by reporting an email as spam, you're actually giving them some features about those emails. So through all this process, they figure out that what email is, which emails are most spammy versus which emails are not. So keeping that in mind, what they will do is they'll create a score for every email, and depending on what the score for that email, they will actually decide whether this email is spammy or not, so to say, right? This feature will help you to design the whole feature extraction and figuring out whether this email is spammy. Will help you to decide whether to keep the email in the inbox or should move it to the spam folder. Right? So that's make it just work, which is that security is not even visible to the end users, right? Because I really don't know what are the emails that are going into my spam or in my trash because of the decisions that I have made in the past, or others like me who have made in the past. Make security or privacy understandable. It's that make it visible, make it intuitive, use metaphors, right? So let me explain some examples here. Make it visible, right? So make it visible as if you were to make if you're going to a website called, let's take Amazon.com, I want to show that whether it is legitimate or not. So in the address bar, I'll give you a green color. And if there are websites that you're going to, for example, there are multiple toolbars which actually tells you whether this domain is actually legitimate or not, right? It'll give you a score saying, oh, this domain was registered on 10th of March of 2000, and this domain was registered on 10th of March of 2018, right? So which can give you a sense of which site is more legitimate versus not legitimate, right? So in the interface, if the information is presented, it's actually the end user is making the decisions. For example, when an email comes, that email is marked as some value, and it still goes through the filter saying that it looks like it's legitimate. So it is presented to you, but there is some highlights in the email saying this email looks actually spammy, so to say, right? So now the email came through the filter, it passed through, the end user is seeing it, and still they make mistakes, right? Still many of us click on links, still many of us open attachments which are not legitimate. So to avoid the second level of problem, if that goes to the user also, the tools and everything, then the third option or the last final option is actually train the user. So the logic is that there is these three solutions, these three, so to say, methodologies have to work together in terms of finding a solution, right? So not a single one will actually solve the entire problem. And I'm going to take a more deeper look into the aspect of train the user, because that's where this whole idea of usability and security is actually playing a more role, and that's where I actually know more things to talk about also. If you really look at the concerns, right, concerns of a security expert versus the user, they're not at all aligned. Concerns for the security expert is that to make sure that things are hard for the end user to do. As the example I said, banking website. In terms of giving you a virtual keyboard, making the password very hard, right? Many passwords by itself is actually hard to figure out. Meaning, if you're interested, take a look at some literature around this password, but there's a TED talk by Lori Krainer which actually talks about passwords itself, right? Passwords, what kind of passwords are more popular, what kind of passwords do people keep, right? So again, password is also some kind of a usability versus security issues, right? Because companies, organizations lets you to create passwords, but there's a lot of rules around it, which is that, oh, it has to have one capital letter, one small letter, same letters cannot come again and again, and it cannot be from dictionary, it cannot be from, you have to use, so to say, the alphanumeric characters, all of that, right? So security experts, they align the concerns of security experts is create it as hard as possible so the bad guys can't get in. The problem with the users is that users think that, boss, I don't want to be locked out. I don't want to forget my password every time I log into the system, right? So that's the problem with the keep the bad guys out and don't lock me out, right? So that's the misalignment of the security expert and the user. Now let me walk you through one of the super exciting projects on usable security, which was done some years back. This project is called Grey, and the main aim of this project was to actually give access to end users through their phone to open up their office doors, to open up the floor doors. And this project, interestingly, what they did in this project was they actually had a microprocessor chip, placed in every door of the building, so they could actually talk to the microprocessor to interact with the processor for giving it instructions for doing some things. So here, this is smartphone-based access control system where, so the scenario is that I want to get into my office from morning. I'm coming out of my parking lot. I open up my phone. I say that I'm near the office. I click a button. My office door will open when I can walk near the door. So that's the whole idea of this project called Grey. Used to open doors in one of the buildings in campus. CIC building allows users to grant access to their doors remotely. For example, the scenario here is that I'm traveling and I want and I'm teaching a course this semester. I have kept the copies of the examination quiz question papers in my office, and I want my teaching assistant to get access to my door and take these copies of the quiz. So what do? I press a button. My TA also has this Grey system. She gets access to the office, and I give her, she's able to get access to my office to get this quiz questions, and she takes away the quizzes. So that's Gray project. Let me walk you through more details about this Gray project, giving you actually how usable security is actually playing an interesting role and an important role in actually solving these kind of problems. So what you see, the image that you see on the right hand side is a floor plan of one of the floors of the CIC building. The circles presented there are the doors that has a processor. It was a year-long study, which is that the student was collecting data from these doors for 1 year, 30 hours of interviews with the people who were using this Gray system. The way it was working was, if I'm a resident of this building, I would get a Nokia phone which has this Gray application. I would use the application for opening my doors, for opening my floor and everything. The researchers working on the project would collect data about how many people are using it, when are they using it, all that kind of information, and they were using it to make judgment on how good the application is. So here is one usability study that was done. So I was actually looking through I was also there physically when this study was done. So it's an interesting way to look at how a study design could be done like this, which is so just look at the image on the right hand side now, which is there's a camera at the end of the room. The camera is looking at the people coming into the door, and the student who's doing this project is actually sitting on one of the tables on the left and bottom side and seeing how people are actually using the keys versus using the Gray versus other ways of actually opening the doors, right? So the feedback that was received from the participants were Gray was slow, but Gray was fast as keys because they were actually able to open the doors with the application Gray on the phone and videotape the door to better understand how doors are opened differently. That's what I was trying to say, which is in the right hand top corner there's a door. The student is actually sitting and seeing it through the door, how users are actually opening the door through their phone versus keys. So this is one of a quote from the researcher who's studying this project, which is, I find myself standing outside and everybody inside is looking at me standing outside while I'm trying to fudge with my phone and open the stupid door, right? So that's the kind of reaction that users was giving while they were using the application Gray. So what they ended up actually finding was that they ended up finding that Gray, after some level of iterations, Gray was actually the way that people were using Gray and the time that it took for users to open the door was actually slightly faster. They could actually get to they don't have to, for example, if I have to show you how my keys are, so my keys are presented this way. So these are my, so let's do it, right? So these are my keys. And if you look at my keys, there are two keys which are very similar, and I want to actually try and I want to try and use these keys and I make mistakes, which key to the which door. So what I've done is I've just added one level of identification for myself, saying that there is this black color thing attached to it, which would allow me to say that this is one of the door versus the other door. And people end up coming with these kind of so to say rudimentary or these kind of hack to get around the problem. Now let me walk you through this one of the aspect of this usable security problem, which is train the user. Train the user is important is because when you look at make it just work, provide the information to the user, train the user comes bottom of the pipeline, but none of these solutions independently can solve all the problems. So therefore, putting them all together and making it work is actually the key for making usable solutions. So let me walk you through some background on why people fall for phishing. This is something intuitive, and this is not a security class, so I'll keep it actually very preliminary, which is people are not motivated to pay attention to training, right? If you keep telling people, put a flyer, put a poster in the offices, schools, saying please don't share passwords, don't open attachments, all of that, but not many people are going to actually look at it and adhere to the solutions that you're giving, right? Security not is my main problem, right? When my relatives, when my family goes to transfer money from one account to another account on a bank website, they're not looking at security as the main thing. They're not looking at, oh, I need to actually look at how this bank is implementing the security policy, right? So mental models are inconsistent with reality, right? If site looks professional, it must be legitimate. So I'll give you actually some pointers. For example, PhD thesis of Rashna Damija from UC Berkeley looked at this problem of showing a bank website and asking people how they think it is legitimate and what are the features that they're looking at to make the decision whether it is legitimate. And people actually think that some of the fake websites that they showed is actually legitimate because they think that it looks very professionally done and therefore it must be actually legitimate. And also, users need actionable advice they can understand. You can't provide them information that they cannot do, that they cannot try themselves. Right? Difficult to be alert if you don't know what you're looking for, right? So because if you're not telling me what should I look for, it's actually going to be hard. For example, I'm sure you're reading it in newspapers and in other places, scams like 419, where they send you an email, they call you and tell you that, oh, we want to actually transfer some large amount of money to one account to another account or to India. For that, we need a small token money from you. If you do it, we'll give you actually 2% of the entire money that we are going to transfer. People give away money for such things, right? There are so many scams like this where people are actually trying to get citizens and people fall for in giving money away. And the point is that you have to be alert, you have to be told what you should be looking for, right? Don't call these numbers, right? In general, if you just tell, I think it's not going to work. Don't call these numbers in particular scenario, particular situation. That's probably a better way of actually promoting or giving the suggestion that you want to give or training material that you want to create. So when we were looking at how do we actually start solving the problem of train the user, we stumbled on this whole area. I actually spent some time in studying some of these more formally also, which is learning science principles, took some courses on this topic, understood how people actually learn, understood people learn through online medium, right? When you teach a class, what are the ways by which you can actually get students' attention? How do they learn? What kind of techniques will actually help learn better? Teachable moments. Teachable moments is another one which is actually very critical because when you were young, you would remember that when you made a mistake and people told you something, you would actually learn it better. You will remember it better. And of course, some level of fun would also be very useful. So these are the three important ways that we took away from understanding this domain of, okay, I want to solve this problem of security. I want to train people on security aspects. So I want to actually find out what are the ways to do it, learning science, teachable moments, and fun. These are the ways that we thought that we could fix the problem. Right? So these are not the only ways to fix the problem. So the way that we attacked this problem is that we created a system called Fish Guru. And I'm the next 30-40 minutes of this lecture is actually going to be looking at Fish Guru in more detail, how the design decisions were made, what are the design, so to say, iterations that went on, and how the evaluation was done, and what kind of evaluations was done around this topic. The way Fish Guru works is an email essence. For example, if I were to actually understand how my students behave with phishing emails, I would come to Fish Guru and I would tell Fish Guru saying that please tell me, please let's find ways by which I could actually learn how my students are falling for this phishing attack. What would Fish Guru do? Fish Guru would send emails to my students pretending as though it is actually real emails. Right? Send emails that look like fish. They are phishing emails that you're sending them. If recipient falls for it, you actually train them. Stop them when they're actually going to give away the password, username, and tell them that, oh, what you just now gave is actually not legitimate. You should not have done this. Right? So these are that's the teachable moment that we are trying to implement, which is when I get an email, there's a link in the email, it's a phishing email, I click on the link, I go to this website, the website is not a legitimate website, so I could actually stop the user saying, please read these instructions, and hoping that people would actually read and remember these instructions. And the another stage of doing it is phishing email, link, click on the link, go to the website, give the username and password, and then stop you saying, oh, you should not have just given the username and password, because it was a fake phishing email that PhishGuru sent it to all of us. And it was also, we also found that PhishGuru, effectiveness of PhishGuru, and found that the same training was not effective sent as a regular email, right? So because if you send the same training material as an email itself, security notices is another one, right? So you will get security notices saying, oh, please beware of, for example, these days we get SMSs, do not share your OTP to people because we don't call, companies or banks don't call you to ask you for OTP. Do not share this OTP with anybody else, right? These kind of SMSs that you keep getting, how many of us actually adhere to it? How many of us read it? How many of us understand it? Probably we understand it, but when it comes to saying that there's a transaction going, somebody is calling you and saying, we just saw you doing some transaction, there is an OTP that we sent you, give it to us, people end up actually giving it. Let me walk you through the design rationales that we made while designing PhishGuru. One of the primary thing that we saw in the design patterns also is to present all the information in above the fold was a design pattern that we saw, right? So keeping that in mind, we wanted to actually have all the important information that we are presenting to the user in just one screen. That was one of the design pattern. And one page constraint is that design rationale that we had to take. Unless instructions from most popular websites, because there's hundreds and thousands of websites actually which is giving you all the kind of instructions that you would need. We were trying to distill all of them, create something that is not unique, create something that is actionable. That was the goal that we were trying to actually achieve. Present the training material when the users clicks the link that I said before. Next 5-6 slides is going to walk you through the designs. Don't worry about actually the background image, what the instructions are and things like that. But I'm going to ask you to focus on the bottom right content, which is the text on top, which reads as warning. Clicking on links like the one in the email you just read puts you at risk for identity theft. A phishing scam uses fraudulent email and web pages to steal bank account information, passwords, and other confidential information. Right? So that's the warning that PhishGuru is presenting, and it is actually applying something. The whole concept of PhishGuru is applying learning by doing, because it's actually falling for the emails by clicking on the links, and immediate feedback. When you click on the link, make a mistake, PhishGuru is stopping you and telling you some feedback. So this one reads, this is the top left corner content, reads that how you were tricked. This email is from my bank, and it is asking, this is the character which is reading it. This is the email from my bank, and it is asking me to update my information. I better click on the link and update it. That's what mostly the users would do. PhishGuru is saying that stop, don't fall for this scam email. And this is actually applying story-based agent principle, which is where there is a story, there is a character, there is a character which is actually suggesting you what should you do and what you should not do, and there are characters which are actually walking you through the content of the characters that are providing you information which you should be reading about. So in this case, this lady's picture here she's a character. I'll show you some more characters that we built as part of this design itself. How to help protect yourself. These are direct instructions. Don't trust links in the email. Never give out personal information. Look careful at the web address. Type in the real website address into a web browser, right? All of this is clearly actionable information that is presented to the user when they actually fall for it. Applies contiguity principle, presents procedural knowledge. Contiguity principle and procedural knowledge go hand in hand. It actually presents the information which you can take and apply and use it. Here is another character which is actually, so to say, the bad guy. How phishers trick you. Here is how con artists try to steal your personal information. I forced the address to look genuine. I threatened the user with an urgent message. I added a link that looks like it goes to one bank, but it really sends people to my site, so I can steal their information and money. Applies personalization principle. Presents conceptual knowledge, right? Personalization, because it's actually talking about I am doing it, you are falling for it, how phishers trick you. Presents conceptual knowledge also, because it is telling you, okay, I sent you this link in the email, I made it urgent and all of that. Finally, this bottom right says thanks Fishguru. Where can I learn more? It says fishguru.org. That's the URL you should go to check for this content if you want to read more about it. Is what Fishguru is telling the character.